We should
Monica,
be
where are
live
you
on
calling in
Facebook.
from?
Hi, I'm calling in from Brussels, Belgium, so not too far from you guys. And I vote in California, like Juan and Martha.
Nice. And Miguel,
Wow, cool.
what about you?
Well, good morning, everyone. I am the only delegate representing Latin America. I vote in Costa Rica, and I am originally from Columbus, Ohio. I also brought a prop. Go Buckeyes.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. We're going live now, and welcome to all of our attendees who are joining us. We are going around introducing ourselves. We are so glad that you've joined our breakfast with our delegation and with our special guests, Ambassadors Tony Harrington and Ambassador Fitz Haney. So everybody keep on going. Who else have we not heard from yet? Aaron, do you remember? Oh, you're on mute. Have we heard from Farid?
Yes, I'm here.
Well, say hello, and where are you calling in from?
Sorry, I'm calling in from Geneva, Switzerland.
Excellent. Where do you vote?
I vote in Los Angeles, California.
Another California voter.
There you go. And then finally, Maria and Anya. We haven't heard from them yet.
I'm from Arizona. I'm from Louisiana, but we're in London right now. I live here. She doesn't.
I like our little finishing each other's sentences thing. That's not horrible at all. I actually live in Leipzig, Germany, but I thought I would be lonely if I did the convention alone, so now I'm annoying her.
Example of unity, Biden and Bernie delegates.
Biden and Bernie delegates.
Right.
There you go.
Us Democrats
Task
abroad.
Force. We have our own unity task force.
Exactly. So wonderful. Let's get started. Actually, Aaron, can you help Lizette get on? She's trying to join, I believe.
Sure.
And just we can move her into the attendees. I'm going to make you a co-host.
Okie doke.
Fantastic.
The more the
Great.
merrier.
Well, oh, and here's Diego. Diego, go ahead.
Yeah, hey everyone. Are we just introducing ourselves?
Yes, we are. This is our delegation breakfast meeting. So we're introducing everybody. Go ahead.
Nice. I can smell the butter toast and
Exactly.
Hey, I'm Diego. I live in Berlin, Germany. I am chapter chair of Democrats Abroad Berlin. We're one of 14 chapters here in Germany. And I am also a delegate for Bernie Sanders.
Woohoo. And I see that John has joined as well. Go ahead, John. Oh, John might be on mute still.
Unmute. John, you're unmuted.
So we will wait. We can say hello to John when he is able to come in. But I just want to welcome everyone who has joined us today and thank you for joining us. My name is Julia Bryan and I'm the global chair of Democrats Abroad. I'm actually in Prague, Czech Republic. I vote in North Carolina. And I'm joined by many members of the DA 2020 delegation who we've just heard from, as well as by our comms director, Aaron Fishbone, and our very special guests, Ambassadors Tony Harrington and Fitz Haney. Today's call is a nod to the breakfast that delegations have each morning at the National Convention when we meet every 4 years. There, delegations review their business for the day and special speakers drop by to say hello and speak for a bit. So this is our very first breakfast of the convention this week. And it's in fact our very first virtual breakfast ever. So I'm really happy you could all join and be with us. So go ahead and pour yourself a cup of coffee or some water or something, and let's get started. As we know, this year's elections couldn't be more important. Democrats Abroad is working literally day and night around our 24 time zones to not only mobilize our voters abroad to request your ballots, but also help you return your ballots and protect them in the process. Because of slow or suspended postal service, working on helping our voters return your ballots has become an incredibly important part of what we work on. And this is particularly crucial today as we're talking about Central and Southern America, because almost 50% of our DA members from this region vote in the 22 states that require their ballots be returned by postal mail. So it's truly an incredibly important topic for us to focus on right now. We are actually reaching out to embassies. We're reaching out to the Senate, to Secretary of States and governors, and we're working with our partners in the Ambassadors for Biden program to find solutions that will help bring your ballots back to the US successfully and on time. So if you are worried about getting your ballot back, you can either write us at gotv@democratsabroad.org for more information, or you can stay on the call after our official business concludes for an overview of some of the solutions that we're working on right now. And now let me tell you a little bit about the Ambassadors for Biden program. It's a group of nearly 200 ambassadors led by Ambassador Bruce Heyman, former ambassador to Canada, who have come together to help mobilize the vote abroad. This is a really unique and first time thing for us to be working with them, and it's just a remarkable experience. These ambassadors are doing outreach in the countries where they formerly served, and they're working in the United States to promote the issues that we need highlighted. For example, our postal mail issue, and actually particularly our postal mail issue. So now I'd like to introduce two fantastic members of the Ambassadors for Biden team and our speakers today. Our first is Ambassador Anthony Harrington. He is the chair of the Albright Stonebridge Group's managing board, and he also leads the firm's Americas practice. He served as U.S. Ambassador to Brazil from 1999 to 2001. And during his time there, he worked to upgrade the level of bilateral relations between the U.S. and Brazil. And he also worked closely with U.S. and Brazilian companies to strengthen business and economic ties. He's currently a member of the UN Foundation of Global Leadership Council. We're really delighted he could join us. We are also joined by Ambassador Fitz Haney, who has had a long career in the private sector before and since serving as ambassador to Costa Rica. He's currently the managing director for the Sales and Client Services Group at Lyrical Partners. Prior to that, he was head of strategic development in Israel's largest tech investment house. He spent years abroad in both Latin America and Israel, and now lives in Israel. So he too is a Dividends Abroad. Please join me in welcoming Ambassadors Harrington and Haney. Ambassador Harrington, would you like to take it away?
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for your participation not only in this event, but going from this event to help assure Democrats abroad vote in mass upcoming. I'll say a few words about the state of affairs under present management and the need to move, urgent need to move to new management of our country. I've often thought that the campaign theme of President Trump about making America great is rather ironic because he's done just the opposite. And we really have to repair the damage, get back to being great again. The place of the U.S. in the world has been diminished under the so-called leadership of this administration. I remember when I left Brazil, I was invited to the Alvorada Palace, the residence with the President Fernando Henrique Cardoso, really a giant of a leader who had been finance minister, foreign minister, senator, leading academic who's taught in major universities in the U.S. and Europe. And he observed that the U.S. had become the only hegemonic power in the world. A state of affairs that previously, obviously, there had been that bipolar world. And I really hadn't thought of it exactly like that, but he said that, you know, the challenge for the U.S. is what will you do with the unique position in which you find yourself. Well, we did a lot of good things over the years, but in terms of our place in the world, 9/11 demonstrated our vulnerability to spectacular terrorist attacks, and our response in invading Iraq, unfortunate course, where we mistakenly asserted there were weapons of mass destruction, destabilized the region. But during this administration, President Trump has set about destabilizing our relationships with our friends, the European alliance, the NATO, etc. He has withdrawn from the very important Iran nuclear agreement. He has engaged in a bizarre dance with North Korea to no event, no result. He has withdrawn from the Paris Climate Accord, climate change being an existential threat to the planet and to ourselves, as Vice President Biden observed yesterday in a convening that I attended, hosted by Speaker Pelosi. We stepped back from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and I think the president has mismanaged our relationship with China. And here at home and more, my partner, Secretary Madeleine Albright, wrote a book that some of you would have seen or read called Fascism, A Warning. And it was rather prophetic in terms of what we have seen in the administration under Donald Trump. We've had Russian election interference to advantage the president in his election, something that he invited rather than doing something to protect our democracy. He held Ukraine hostage for military aid that had been appropriated by the Congress, looking for political help. He talked about good people on both sides in the racist events in Charlottesville. He's used troops to counter Americans exercising their First Amendment rights protest of the recent unfortunate events and loss of lives among Black Americans. And now, unbelievably, although he tries to distance himself, things don't go well, he's looking to prevent people from exercising the basic right of democracy and voting in a challenging time. So President Trump, in my view, is loyal to one thing, and that is President Trump. On the other hand, we have Vice President Biden, who is a very welcome voice of reason. He has unmatched experience, frankly, for anyone aspiring to be president versus the bad experience or no experience we have with President Trump. He has particularly a lot of relevant to our concerns, a lot of international experience and relationships with leaders around the world. And also particularly for this event, as we know, he, under the Obama administration, had the charge to focus particularly on Latin America and the region. President Dilma Rousseff was asked after the WikiLeaks scandal about surveillance in Brazil. Vice President Biden took the effort to restore better relations, and President Rousseff was asked, can you say anything good about the President Obama and the Obama administration? And she said, well, one thing, he has good taste in vice presidents. So she may have done a lot of things wrong, but she recognized a good man when she encountered him. And obviously, now we have a team with Kamala Harris, the first woman of color to be running for vice president. Black Americans and a very large number of Indian Americans are extremely enthusiastic. She brings experience in the Senate and great experience in the state level as Attorney General. She's very intelligent and confident, and if I were Mike Pence, I think I would be a little nervous about the debate. So as suggested, there's probably no election in our lifetimes, and maybe no election period in this country that's more important than this one. So let's all do all we can to not only vote ourselves, but see that all those we can reach out to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Harrington. And our next speaker is Ambassador Fitz Haney. Go ahead, Fitz.
Hi, Julia, thank you. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone on the call. I think I'm the farthest, well, no, Nepal, actually. So good evening as well. And it's an honor to be on the panel with Ambassador Harrington. I'm gonna, I think, talk about some of the things that we're all looking for in our next president and vice president. And I've kind of boiled it down to two key areas. One is the ability to lead, and the other is ability to bring the nation together to start to heal some of the wounds and divisions the current administration, I think, has purposely actually fueled. On the ability to lead, just echoing Ambassador Harrington's point, there's no question that Vice President Biden not only has experience and knowledge, probably more than any other candidate in our history to become president. You know, from his days when he was commuting back and forth from Delaware to DC as a senator, his extensive experience on the various Senate committees that are very important, to his 8 years as President Obama's vice president, confident, and really the last person in the room. I think he knows how to get the wheels of government working again for all US citizens and not for a select few. And importantly, I think for where we are today in the world, he also knows how to address the key issues that are really confronting us today. You know, he had experience in an earlier pandemic, Ebola, and he was the lead for the Obama, Biden administration on the Great Recession bailout plan. And so if we're talking about a pandemic and we're talking about an economic devastation, there's no one better positioned today, I think, in our government or in our apparatus in our country to really try to lead the country forward in these critical times. And also I think the first choice that a presidential candidate makes, and probably the most important that he or she does, is their choice for a vice president. And, echoing again Ambassador Harrington, the choice of Senator Harris is historic. There's no question about it. As the first woman of color, first woman of African and South Asian descent to be on a major party ticket. But I think it also talks a lot about Vice President's character and his leadership and the way he will lead the nation going forward. He asked Senator Harris to be on the ticket because he sincerely believes she is best positioned to help him lead the country from day one. And I think in choosing her, he chose someone with vast experience at both the state and federal levels. As a junior senator from California, she's been a very tireless voice in the U.S. Senate for disadvantaged groups and people without as much voice as others in our nation today. She ran the largest U.S. Attorney's office in the United States. The only one larger is actually the U.S. Attorney because it includes California. And so she's someone that could hit the ground running, help lead the country, and importantly, someone who understands, I think, the day-to-day struggle and fight for equality, justice, economic progress that hundreds of millions of Americans, hope for and fight every day. And she's someone who embodies the American dream and her story, her trajectory, and her personal history. So, I think, personally, he made the best choice he could make, and I know he believes that as well. But I also think it's very important today, not just that we have somebody that could fix the problems that we're facing, but how they go about fixing them. And I think here, Joe Biden is untouched in his ability to understand the struggle, pain, hopes, and aspirations that we all face and have. And I just wanted to share a personal story about some interaction I had with the vice president a few years ago. In August of 2016, I led a delegation, a presidential delegation from Costa Rica to the White House, where we wanted to announce the largest U.S. investment in bilateral cooperation on security, intelligence, and migration that the United States had made to Costa Rica in over 30 years. And given Vice President Biden's portfolio of Latin America within the Obama administration, he was going to be the key principal that would host the meeting. And then we were later going to be joined by President Obama as well. So usually in these meetings, pre the start of the meeting, there's an official briefing. And as ambassador, I was going to be the one giving the briefing to Vice President Biden. So we're in his office and we're all sitting there, his key staff, key staff from the State Department, somebody from the Defense Department as well, Homeland Security, which is very important as far as Costa Rica goes. And I'm briefing him on our key points, our key interests, what we're trying to accomplish, what the possible reactions of the Costa Ricans might be, and where we kind of want to end up. And then we end before heading to the Roosevelt Room, where we're going to join the Costa Rica delegation and President Obama. And he pulls me aside before we actually leave his office. And he asked me how my wife's doing with her battle with breast cancer. And this is probably just a little over a year after he had lost his son, Bo, to cancer. And to me, this kind of detail, this kind of taking the time to address the humanity of those standing right in front of him, it's just classic Joe Biden. And it's real, and it's very important. And I think it's really what our nation needs today. And so, Ambassador Harrington touched upon, really eloquently laid out the current status of the U.S. global standing. As Dems abroad, most of us feel this on a daily basis in our everyday lives. And I want to touch a little bit upon what this might mean from a Western Hemisphere, the Americas perspective. And I think in the case of the relationships in the Western Hemisphere, we are under the current leadership in between benign neglect and active disdain, in all honesty. I think, the policies have been driven by the prism of short-term electoral politics, and echoing again what Ambassador Harrington said, whatever works for Donald Trump is what this current administration drives for. And so from attacking our longest and strongest ally, Canada, over trade policies, to the selective engagement on Venezuela and Cuba, to the overall approach to the demonization, I think, of refugees and migrants from Latin America. These actions and these tactics have been driven by what the current administration believes will play best within the president's base, within domestic base within the United States. I am confident that things under a Biden-Harris administration will be different. Vice President Biden was asked once a while ago if he could define the United States in one word, what would it be? And he thought a little while and he said possibilities. And I think he truly believes that. And he wants that opportunity and those possibilities made available to everyone around the world, but especially within our own hemisphere. And so what he would strive for all the inhabitants of the region is, freedom of all the peoples, economic development, to raise the entire region, at least to the middle class, security. And we'll get there through things he's already outlined, such as regional cooperation, the rule of law, anti-corruption, focusing on climate change. And he really does have a long-term strategy to build security and prosperity of the countries in the hemisphere, as he fully believes that that's a prosperous, secure, and free hemisphere is in the long-term strategic, economic, and moral interests of the United States. And this is more than rhetoric. He did lead the Obama-Biden efforts to establish the Alliance for Prosperity, which was established as the largest investment of the U.S. in the Western Hemisphere since Plan Colombia. It was really aimed at working at some of the key issues driving migration from the Northern Triangle. He and President Obama, by my account, and I could be wrong here, but have visited the region over 25 times in their years in office. The current administration, again, by my count, has been less than 5 times. And then on another personal note, it goes beyond just migration, cooperation, and security issues. On one of her last trips as second lady, Dr. Biden actually came down to Costa Rica to launch a program with UNESCO called Teach Her, which is an effort to encourage and make possible additional participation by young women in the STEAM fields, figuring that that's the future, and the only way that we're going to meet our potential around the world is making sure that all of our components or economic drivers within each and every country has an opportunity to really progress in future activity. And so she launched this initiative spearheaded by our embassy, with the First Lady of Costa Rica and the First Ladies of Central America and the Dominican Republic to really focus on the future and building that kind of opportunity and possibilities that Vice President Biden says is his goal as well. So I think I'll be kind of ended here, but it's for all these reasons, it's vital that we as Americans abroad, we register to vote, and we encourage our friends and family, colleagues, acquaintances to also register and to send their ballots in as soon as possible, especially to Julia's first point. If you're in one of the countries where 40 to 50, which we believe, at least in the Western Hemisphere, 40 to 50% of all of us are, of the 22 states that require you to send your ballot back by mail, such as my home state of New Jersey does, you need to register now. They have to have the ballot back to you by September 19th, if I'm not mistaken, and you have to turn that ballot in right away. We need to get that ballot back in as soon as possible to make sure that our voice and our vote can count. We are significant in largely untapped electoral pool. When I first got the data that the U.S. citizens abroad would be the 11th or 12th largest electoral pool in the United States if it were a state, that shows you the strength and the potential we have to really make a difference in this election. I know in Costa Rica alone, there are enough eligible U.S. citizens and descendants of U.S. citizens that had they voted en bloc in the last election, they could have changed the outcomes of states such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And we might be in a completely different world today than we are under the current administration. So it's just vitally important that everyone encourages as many people out there to vote as possible. If you go to votefromabroad.org, as you guys all know, it's very easy to do. I did it in 5 minutes. And for me, my litmus test was the fact that I had my mother-in-law go there by herself, and she could do it in about 5 minutes as well to register to vote in Florida. So it's painless, it's straightforward, and it's something that we all need to do. I'll end there.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Haney. You did a great plug for Vote From Abroad. It is incredibly important that we get started now. In fact, if you are in a country where you have really, really slow postal service, we have another solution for you. It's called an FWAB. It's a write-in absentee ballot. We'll be talking about that after the official business is over. It's really important that you get started sending things in, because we know in some countries it's taking 8 weeks for post to get in. So the time to start sitting in your ballot is now. In fact, it's for some places. So with that, we're going to start with some questions. We have been getting lots of great questions in for you guys. And our first question is for Ambassador Harrington, and I'll go ahead and ask it. And then we'll move each, we'll try to have other delegates ask questions. But Ambassador Harrington, this is about the election in Brazil of Bolsonaro. And basically that election may have been the most consequential political event in the Western Hemisphere in the last several years, besides the election of Donald Trump as president. To what extent do you believe that Bolsonaro's election is a consequence of Trump's election? And what could be some of the long-term consequences? And following up on that, what would the relationship look like between Bolsonaro's government and a more typical administration in the United States?
Yes, thank you. Well, I don't believe that Bolsonaro's election was a consequence of Donald Trump's election in the U.S. I think, though, that the election of each of them was a product of some of the same factors at work. What we are seeing to a considerable extent in the hemisphere and elsewhere around the world is the rise of populist and authoritarian leaders and government on the right and on the left. And I believe this is a consequence of the public, the citizens, of feeling that the institutions, not only government, but beyond government, and the elites have failed to bring about some things that we talk about and really haven't achieved, and particularly the dramatic income and wealth inequality in the hemisphere and many other places in the world. In Brazil also, I'm sure most everyone heard or read about the Lava Jato investigation of corruption, revealing corruption at a high level and a deep level and sort of endemic to the way of doing business in Brazil, leading to the imprisonment of President Lula and the impeachment of President Rousseff. So I think it's a desire for change, desire for something better, but not necessarily making the right decisions. As a matter of fact, making the wrong decisions, as with Donald Trump, the President Trump, or then candidate Trump, was taking advantage of the disaffection and has continued to and made it worse. Vice President Biden is just really kind of the opposite, as Ambassador Haney described, a person with great concern about his fellow citizens and even to individual health and misfortunes among people that he encounters. There has been an affinity between President Bolsonaro and President Trump and others in his in the Bolsonaro administration, as the polls have indicated favorable disposition among voters toward Vice President Biden. There have been a few occasions where the President Bolsonaro and Foreign Minister Ernesto Araújo have been asked or have reflected on how they can work together with the U.S. and a very different administration, and pretty much have indicated they'll do the best they can to adapt to the change. It's going to be very different. Bolsonaro and Biden could hardly be more different, but on the other hand, President Bolsonaro is very pro-American, and Brazilians, by and large, I think are rather pro-American. There's a good bit of cultural affinity as there is elsewhere in the hemisphere. So Vice President Biden is familiar with Brazil, visited there and met Brazilian leaders here in Washington. So I would be cautiously optimistic that we'll get things back on a better track in the relationship.
Well, thank you so much. That's very, very interesting, especially with your experience and your understanding of that country. So our next question is for Ambassador Haney, and Miguel Madrigal is going to ask it. Miguel, are you ready with the question?
Yes, I am.
All right.
First of all, I just like to thank Ambassador Haney for all of his service. I had the pleasure to know him personally when he was here in Costa Rica. So thank you, Mr. Fitz, as you were popularly called in Costa Rica. Everybody loves you here. We remember you with great affection. So thank you for your service, Mr. Ambassador. So here's a question from me. So how has the Trump administration, well, we know they've attacked migrants affecting, how have the Trump administration's attacks on migrants affected relations between the U.S. and the various Central American governments? Are these changes the sort that could potentially be rolled back in one term of a Democratic presidency?
Miguel, well, thank you, and thank you for those kind words. It was an honor of a lifetime to serve as President Obama's and Vice President Biden's representative in the great country of Costa Rica, which I miss very much. There's a very good question. The relationship runs deep and strong between the United States and Central America. And we have a lot of concerns, issues, objectives, and hopes in common between the two. Candidate Trump if we all remember, was going on the escalator in 2015 in Trump Tower, New York, began his campaign disparaging Mexican immigrants of Mexican descent into the United States. And it's really continued since then. And again, I think more in the prism of what will help him electorally than it will from a policy standpoint. There is really no true policy these days towards Central America, toward trying to address some of the key fundamental issues that were driving the large migrations we saw back in 2014 through 2016. Especially of young unaccompanied minors that were heading toward our southwest border. So things were tense to begin with. The requirements that the Obama-Biden administration did place on some of the Central American governments around corruption, around the rule of law, in the Alliance for Prosperity were not easy. The follow-up has not been as thorough or as continual as it should have been under the current administration. And the focus under the current administration has been completely anti-migration, anti-refugee, and very little about addressing any of the fundamental issues or building up the region as a strategic imperative for the United States. It is interesting that one of the benefits about having been in a political process in Washington for such a long time, it took me almost a year to get confirmed. And in that year, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in Washington and spend a lot of time with both parties in the House and the Senate. And there is a large body of bipartisan belief about the US's approach to Central America. None of that is coming through in the Trump administration, unfortunately. It will definitely be reversed under a Biden-Harris administration. The vice president has already put forth another plan for Central America, calling for, I believe, about $4 billion of US investment in the region. Can it be rolled back in one term? I think there's hope that there have not been permanent damage. But as I tell my kids, one of my favorite quotes about trust is that, to build trust, it takes years, it takes seconds to destroy it, and to regain it, it could take up to forever. And I think that's really the danger that we've seen over the last 4 years. And it would be a travesty to have to go through another 4 years. And I don't know what that would do with the US position, not just in the hemisphere, but globally, to have another Trump presidency.
Thank you very much. And I think we all share that concern. It's actually really existential. So our next person who's going to ask a question is Anelika. Anelika, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hello, thank you, Ambassador Harrington, and thank you, Ambassador Haney. It's very nice to have you here, and it's nice to have some components of what a regular convention will look like, so thank you. Ambassador Harrington, this question is for you. One of the early victims of Trump's quest to tear up every piece of paper signed by President Obama was Americans' rapprochement with Cuba. Will a Biden administration be able to put the pieces back together? And do you believe it will be possible to get buy-in from enough of Congress to pass legislation to cement these changes and build lasting peace between the US and Cuba?
Ambassador, you're on mute. So let's just unmute you and you're all set.
Thank you.
There you go. No problem.
Yes, that was another example of stepping backward instead of moving forward, progressing the relationship between the U.S. and another country just off our shores. Basically, I predict that we will resume dialogue toward normalization under a Biden administration, as there was under President Obama. I unexpectedly became involved in the issue of normalizing relationships, establishing relationships between the U.S. and Cuba. Back in the Clinton administration, I was involved in, on behalf of private industry, in expanding telecom between the US and Cuba. I kept getting, dealing with ministers there by phone, I kept getting, or sending someone else, getting an indication that if I came to Havana, we would reach an agreement on the telecom expansion. And this was one area that was specifically allowed under the Helms-Burton Act that otherwise constricted relations. So I went, I had to get a waiver in order to go because I was chairman of the President's Intelligence Oversight Board at the time and had essentially access to intelligence that the president had. And you're restricted from visiting a list of countries under that circumstance unless you get a waiver. They told me to give myself the waiver. Nobody wanted to give it, take responsibility for it. So I did go, and not surprisingly, I found when I got there, the vice president who met me at the airport asked if I would be willing to meet with Fidel Castro, which I, of course, said I would. And I had about a 2-hour private visit with Fidel Castro. I would say it was a discussion, but it was mostly him talking, as apparently was the norm. But it was a case of the Cubans reaching out and seeking to initiate and accomplish a normalization, as opposed to while we were sympathetic and pushing for expanded contact and so forth, it was more coming from the Cubans under Castro, and it was reinforced by the vice president and well, mainly the vice president in Cuba. So it's an indication, I think, that they want it, they need it in terms of their economy. We need to get beyond this long, challenging, difficult relationship. I might say, why did it not happen at the time? It didn't happen because there was the Brothers to the Rescue flyover of Cuba and shoot down of planes that meant that we really couldn't continue the discussions under those circumstances, the loss of lives and so forth. It was unfortunate, but bottom line is, I think we will get it back on track. I'm optimistic.
Thank you. So our next question is going to be asked by Tim Ellis, who's in Canada, and it's a Canadian oriented question, and it's for Ambassador Haney. Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks, Julia. I'm Tim, I'm from Canada, and here the USMCA is a really big deal, a very important part of our political landscape. So my question is for Ambassador Haney. Do you think that Biden will change the trade agreement between the US, Mexico, and Canada? And how does it view this agreement and trade between our three countries?
Thank you, Tim, for the question. I think in general, I just want to take a slight step back, and then I'll dive into USMCA directly. But obviously, the Vice President Biden has been a proponent for decades of U.S. engagement around the world. And so the belief, the only way to truly make America great again is for us to be back at the table and to try to take another leadership role that we've pulled back from for the last 3 to 4 years. And so I would expect that we will see engagement in things such as talking with our NATO allies at a different level and a different voice. Perhaps TPP, which was a huge Obama-Biden initiative that the President Trump walked away from, that would be vitally helpful today in dealing in a multilateral way with China, that we lost that opportunity for the last few years. So as far as USMCA, the ties between the three countries are obviously some of the strongest in the world. Canada without a doubt, is one of our strongest, longest, and best allies. We are neighbors and friends. We have the longest unsecured border in the world between any two countries. And there's a real desire, I know north of the border, for the United States to succeed in getting back to the position we were in traditionally. And so I would expect that that the Biden-Harris administration will do everything in its power to implement all of the facets of USMCA, to the best of their ability and as quickly as possible, to walk away from some of the very destructive and really just destructive on a bilateral relationship basis, and destructive on a focus in removing focus from key issues around the world on things such as the steel tariffs with the Canadians. We need to be dealing with our allies in a different tone pitch. We could have issues, we could have discussions, we always do. We always will put the U.S. interests first, but we also do realize that having those kind of strong relationships from a strategic standpoint is what is going to help us meet our objectives globally. And so I would expect the USMCA to be in full force, perhaps some provisions be strengthened, and some of the things that are currently on the Democratic platform be brought to fore as well. But without a doubt, it will be back to more business as usual when it comes to bilateral and multilateral relations, especially within our own hemisphere.
Thank you so much. And we are definitely all hoping that. So Maria is going to take our next question. Maria, are you ready? Go ahead.
So this is for Ambassador Harrington. So the slow destruction of Venezuela has led to the largest refugee crisis on earth. As of a year ago, more than 60% of that country's population becoming refugees. Can you talk a bit about the regional consequences of the situation, the political situation within the country, how a Biden administration might address this situation?
Venezuela, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It is a particularly sad case in terms of the condition of the country and our relationship, which is pretty much non-existent. It's a very challenging situation. It's a very sad one, because Venezuela, as most know, was a relatively prosperous country in the past, and has now gone to a condition of impoverishment for all except the select few in the ruling group. There has been, and we need it to continue and strengthen the regional collaboration, where most of the countries on the continent and in the hemisphere have, well, I don't know if Mexico has particularly, but most and the South America have collaborated in seeking to arrest the decline, return to some sense of democracy, and improve the situation. I think we have supported, and we need to continue to support, the sort of alter government, the Guaido government, as again, several countries in the continent have recognized the Guaido government as legitimate, and the Maduro government as illegitimate. One hopes that with a collaborative effort, and with the U.S. much more engaged, not in threatening military action, but in use of diplomacy, which is what we're focused on here today, that situation will improve. I'm confident that under President Biden, we will make a more enlightened and collaborative effort with other countries. It's going to require, though, a focus on humanitarian assistance, the huge number of refugees and those who are still at home in Venezuela that are living in such poor conditions. We should also, and I would expect the Biden-Harris administration to engage with the multilateral development institutions, the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank, and IFC to help get the economy back on its feet and to restore and rebuild more democratic institutions. But it's not going to be easy. And we have to contend with the factor that it has led the Russian government in particular to sort of use Venezuela as a proxy for working against US interest, maybe some Chinese involvement as well. So in the hemisphere, it's the country in most need of attention, and yet probably the most difficult challenge. It's fortunate we will have a president who has particularly focused on the region and knows many of the leadership on the continent.
That's a really good point, and one we hadn't been thinking about that, but I appreciate your thoughts on that. And as Anelika says, she's a Venezuelan American, and this is an issue that is really important to her and to so many people around the world who are also paying attention to that region. So our next question is going to be from Diego Rivas. He's in Berlin, and go ahead, Diego.
Yeah, hello, and like everyone else, thank you so much for your time today. Yeah, so the question I have is, the massive protests by Chileans in response to the failure by that country's government to address the pressing social and economic issues seem to come as a result of that country's particularly laissez-faire approach to the economics and social safety net. Yeah, are there other countries besides Venezuela, of course, and Latin America that are at risk of undergoing some sort of similar upheaval? And how do you view the situation in Chile overall? And how should a future Biden-Harris administration engage?
Very good question. I would say that, well, first and foremost, the Chileans have always been at the forefront of the social safety net with their establishment decades ago of the universal pension scheme. There has been, over the last, I'd say, decade, a sort of hands-off, let the market determine what that scheme will look like going forward, and the realization that as people's lives improved and the standard of living increased and longevity also increased, that the return from those pension plans was not going to be enough, in all honesty, to sustain people in their later years. It's nothing that's just endemic to Chile. If you look at the United States, you look at lots of countries in Europe, they have the same issue, which is an aging population and some type of social security net, which probably will not be sufficient to maintain that population in a standard that we would hope to going forward, and an extra burden put on the younger generations to support that. And so the answer to how do you address that is something that the United States itself is going to have to confront. And I think it's a good example of an opportunity for the Biden-Harris administration to really engage in solutions that try to find the best of breed out there for the United States and for other countries as well. The additional stressors that the global pandemic, COVID-19, as well as the economic devastation resultant from the pandemic, have put a lot of countries under additional stress. And so Chile by far is not the only one within the hemisphere. Some that come to mind immediately are Argentina. I would say Mexico, even a country as stable and democratic as Costa Rica is facing fiscal issues that it didn't face a decade or two ago. And so this is something that is hemispheric wide. and something that the United States ourselves, we need to find a way to address. And I'm hoping that, to Ambassador Harrington's point, re-engaging in multilateral agencies throughout the hemisphere will allow us to try to work toward this common goal of addressing these types of issues. But I am positive that the Biden-Harris administration recognizes that the issue does exist and will work diligently to try to improve it.
Great. Well, we have one last question for both of you. And we're going to ask Lizette. Lizette, would you like to ask it? Aaron, if you'll pop it into the chat box. Or I can ask it. I'll go ahead and ask it. Why, ambassadors, why have you guys been moved to become engaged at this time in this type of campaigning and get out the vote efforts? And let's start with you, Ambassador Harrington. And you're on mute. I'm so sorry. Yes.
Thank you for reminding me. Well, as I said earlier, I don't think there's been an election in our lifetimes more important. And I've been involved off and on in politics and government on the side of law and business. Over the years, found that often you can make more of a difference than you might think you could. In years past, I was general counsel of the Democratic National Committee, outside general counsel. I filed suit against the Republican National Committee and a state Republican committee in your home state of New Jersey, Ambassador Haney, for a widespread practice of voter intimidation, using off-duty policemen and so forth to deter Black Americans from voting. In federal court, we got a consent decree that lasted for years. The federal judge kept it in place. Unfortunately, it expired 2 or 3 years ago. Well, now further back. It was expired before the last election, and now we're seeing the same thing happening and worse. Considering what's at stake, I was moved to become involved with ambassadors for Biden and now Biden-Harris. Basically, I think our message here is every vote counts, or hopefully will be counted. The votes of yourselves and your friends and your networks can truly make a difference in the outcome of an election. We can't take anything for granted, as we saw in 2016.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. What about you, Ambassador Haney?
I think my answer is fairly, I get pummeled at the dinner table every night. I have 3 Generation Z and 1 Generation Alpha children who, kind of pose the question of what kind of world have you left for us? And why did you guys mess things up as badly as you have? Which is good questions for young people to have. I have to remind them that there have been a lot of us who have fought long and hard to make the world a better place, and a lot of people who came before us who fought even harder to give us opportunity to fight hard. But I think the fundamental question is a very good one, and I can't imagine not getting involved when we're facing such a consequential election. And I'm thinking about the future for my kids and the world that they are inheriting. I do think that the United States and the promise of, although imperfect as it was, of the founding fathers way back when, part of that was the need for us to continually make a better union, which means that we need to be involved in doing that. That we all have the responsibility to continue to improve what they put forward. And we have traditionally done that in fits and starts and backwards and forwards over the last 250 years, more or less. But what I've seen, the retrospection I've seen in the last 3 to 4 years is frightening, in all honesty. It's frightening for the United States, and it's frightening for the world because of the place that the United States traditionally has played for the last 75 years in the world order. So I think that we all need to do as much as we can to help reestablish the moral, ethical character of the country, and to help start to address some of these global problems that we're all facing. And a reliance on allies and friends and science again, that will be key to help us address some of these issues. So just, echoing what Ambassador Harrington just said, it's never been as important as it is. It always is important to exercise your right to vote and to live in countries that have that right, because many do not. And we do hope that our votes are counted, but we need to make sure that we get out there and encourage as many people as we know, especially those of us who live abroad, to take the time to vote and then follow up, make sure that you're registered correctly, make sure you get your ballot, and make sure you get your ballot back in time. Because again, 11,000 votes in Michigan, 15,000 votes in Wisconsin, 25,000 votes in Pennsylvania was the difference in the last election. And there are going to be a number of states, North Carolina, Julia, one of them, that this time it's going to be probably just as close. So every single vote will hopefully count, but we have to make the effort to get out there and vote.
Absolutely agree. Thank you so much, both of you. It was a real pleasure to have you join our breakfast.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity.
And we look forward to working with you. It's fantastic what you're doing with the countries that you formerly served. And we're, as we move forward in these next few weeks, we'll be working close. So thanks again. And now just to let everybody who's on the call know, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the voting solutions that you have at your fingertips in order to make sure you get your ballots back. But I did want to just say again to our ambassador guests, thank you very much for everything that you're doing.
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure.
And thank you, delegates. We have a wonderful group of delegates this year. It's the youngest and most diverse delegation we've ever had. And they're really, they're fantastic. They literally are all around the world, from Kathmandu to Calgary to Toronto to Taiwan. So it's just an amazing spread of people. With that, I just wanted to go over some voting points. If you are one of 20, if you are from the states, there are 22 states that require postal mail ballots. And we're going to be pulling up that a meme that shows those 22 states. We have some solutions for you. They're not perfect solutions, but there are some options. The first option that we're really recommending everyone do is fill in something called a federal write-in absentee ballot. It's called the FWAB. You can access that ballot by going to votefromabroad.org/FWAB and reading more information about it. What this ballot does is it allows you to write in candidates for your state onto your ballot. And you're filling in all your personal information, your voting information, and who you want to vote for onto this ballot. And then you can go ahead and postal mail it in today, in fact, if you want to, or tomorrow. And we really are urging people to do this now and not wait until September 19th because of the slowdown in voting. If you have any questions during this process while you're filling out the FWAB, we have people who are online and on our intercom, our online help desk, who will help you walk through that process. We're really happy to answer your questions. And then there's two things that are really important to know. Before you send in your FWAB, you must have already sent in your federal postcard application that requests your ballot. So you do that first, then you do the FWAB, and then the second thing that's really important to know is that you can go ahead and send in your regular ballot after you receive it in September, and only one will be counted. It's not a problem to send in both. Only one will ultimately be counted. Local election offices are going to be very familiar with FWABs by the end of this election cycle. They are not going to be concerned when they see that you have two ballots and one's a FWAB and one's a regular ballot. Not a concern at all. So again, you can find that ballot. Let's go ahead and put the link in the chat box. I sound like an NPR person here, but again, it's votefromabroad.org/FWAB. And do we have that meme yet to show everybody the 22 states? If you're wondering if your state is one of those 22 states, you can find out easily by going to votefromabroad.org vermont.gov/states, and then looking up your state. Unfortunately, there are some of the really key states in this election, like Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio. Oh, and here we have the meme. Thank you, Aaron. There you go. So these are the states: Arkansas, Connecticut, Georgia, Iowa, Idaho, Illinois, Kentucky, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, Vermont, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Now, good news about 2 of these states, Missouri and Vermont. Keep your eyes on these 2 states because Missouri may be going to email, and Vermont, if you don't have any postal service from your country to the United States, Vermont now allows you to email back your ballot. So that's really good news. But if you're unfortunately in France where you can ostensibly send a ballot back by postal, you still have to, unfortunately, you still have to postal mail your ballot back. So go ahead and take care of it now. And again, any questions go to gotv@democratsabroad.org or info@democratsabroad.org. We'd love to help you. Any questions from our attendees on this? Any questions? We're always happy to help. And the other thing, if while you're doing this process, you have a bunch of questions and you want to talk to someone live, Sundays, we're doing a 24-hour help desk on Zoom, which is great. You just go to the democratsabroad.org website and you click on the cute graphic that one of our designers made. I really love this graphic, and you can join our Zoom call. It's really, you get slotted into a breakout room. So you're talking one-on-one with somebody, and they'll help you answer your questions. And we're really happy to also talk to you on our help desk as well.
Julia, we do have a couple of questions.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and
Joan, I think. I'm not sure.
Let's see. Joan Stack is asking if New Jersey's changed its rules. As far as we know, they have not yet changed their rules. We are keeping on that project though. And Cindy says, why are both a regular ballot and an FWAB needed? Great question, Cindy. So you can just send in your FWAB if you would like, but sometimes a regular ballot, if you can get your regular ballot back, it can have more information on it. There could be more information about what you can vote for, et cetera, on that ballot. So it's not necessary to send it, your regular ballot back, but it's just something you can do. Feel assured that you can do that. The other thing I wanted to mention about FWABs and where you can get your voting information, Ballotopedia has a wonderful, wonderful sample ballot lookup that can someone pop that link into the chat box. It's ballotopedia.org, I believe, /sample ballot lookup, something like that. And we're going to put that in the chat box for you right now. And it's a really, you just go, you put in your zip code, and you can actually see everything that's going to be on your ballot. And I really recommend it. The other thing to know is that if your primary is not over yet, you can still vote. What you do is you say, you can fill in your presidential candidate, you can say House Democrat, Senate Democrat, and it will be assigned to, you'll be assigned whoever wins the primary. That's a really interesting aspect of the FWAB. Any other questions from the audience? Oh, thank you, David. And thank you, Aaron.
Julius, Adrian.
Oh, hi, Adrian.
I just wondered, I have a horrible echo.
Everybody mute. Lizette, can you mute? Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Adrian.
It might be me still, because I have 2 things going. Okay, hopefully that's better. I just wondered if you could, because when you say do the postcard, you know, you have to do the postcard before you do the FWAB, just so people understand, the postcard is like when you go to vote from abroad and you put in all of your information and that gets sent to your local election office, that's considered the postcard, correct?
That's exactly right, Adrian. So basically, that's your FBCA form, your federal postcard application, and you fill it in by going to votefromabroad.org and just going through that form. And in most places, you can send it in by email. There are only a few places like Arkansas and Alabama that require you to send it in by post.
So that's for people who haven't already done it. Like we did it ages ago, right? Everybody on this call did it.
January 1st, January 1st, New Year's resolution.
But if you haven't done it, you can scramble, do it today, and then immediately download your FWAB.
Absolutely, right.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was clear, that people didn't have to wait for anything between those 2 steps. You do them simultaneously.
Well, exactly right, because you can do them simultaneously. It would be better if they arrived at least in the same post. You don't want your FPCA form to get there after your FWAB, but yeah, for most people you can email it in. So that's going to, your FPCA form is going to get there way before your ballot.
Well, my last thing for clarification, can FWABs, if I'm, like, for example, I voted in DC, I can receive and return my ballot by email.
Yep.
If my ballot, for some reason, doesn't come by email, can I email in an FWAB, or does that have to?
That's a great question. And basically, your FWAB transmission is the same as your ballot transmission. So if you are an email state, you can email in your FWAB, and then you can email in your ballot. If you're a fax state, and we do have California and Florida are 2 fax states, then you can you can fax in your FWAB, and then later on fax in your regular ballot. But there's not too much reason to email or fax in your FWAB unless your ballot doesn't arrive. And we will have, we'll be really, really focused on states that, and making sure that they're sending out their ballots on time. And I want to notify everyone on this call too. If you don't get your ballot by September 20th, 21st at the very latest, get in touch with us immediately, because that means a lot of other people haven't gotten their ballot. And it's really useful for us to know that, because we can start poking at the local election offices and say, get those ballots out. You're federally required to do so.
And really, really last question then. So what is the cutoff date, do you think, for FWABs that should be submitted? If people are waiting till the 21st of September to get their ballot, by the 22nd, they should send in an FWAB. Is that your recommendation?
Well, it depends upon if you are a postal mail only state, then you should have done it already. But yes, that's true. But if you are an email person, you still have time. So I would wait a week before you send in an FWAB, and we will be really messaging a lot.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you, Tim, for the link. We have the wonderful thing about being in this delegation is you become a voter expert. And so we are a whole delegation of voter experts all around the world. All right, let's see, any other questions?
Julia, I think there's a question from Cindy Cook. She's asking, what is an FPCA?
Oh, an FPCA is your federal postcard application. And that is the application that you're filling out that protects you as an overseas voter. And it gives you a lot of different protections that being a state absentee voter doesn't have. So we really recommend you go to votefromabroad.org to fill in that FPCA forms and send it to your local election office. That's going to let you have earlier ballot receipt time. It gives you longer transmission return time. It gives you more transmission options, and it protects your ballot federally, because we know there's going to be a lot of state shenanigans. So we really recommend going the UOCAVA overseas voter route rather than your local state absentee. Your state absentee ballot is not protected federally at all. Great questions. I'm so glad everybody's clarifying. Anything else we're missed, delegates? What else should we bring up? This is good, a great Q&A, because we all remember things we need to talk about. Diego, you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I just, for the listeners out there, Democrats Abroad, we're not just delegates, we're also volunteers around the world. So in most major cities, and definitely in your region, you can definitely get involved with Americans living there and really get out the vote. And for whatever reason, if you live somewhere where you're the only American there, you can also do things like phone bank. And that really helps. And our campaigns right now are really targeted. So we're looking directly at the states that do have to return their ballots via post, and specifically the battleground states within this group of states. So, phone banking, get involved. We're hundreds of volunteers, probably over 1,000 worldwide, and together we make the difference.
That's right. We have a huge, actually we have over 1,000 volunteers who are really active. It's kind of phenomenal. We're, I have to say, we're the envy of state parties because of our volunteer leadership. It's really amazing. Thank you for that. If you're interested in phone banking, there's a link in the chat, democratsabroad.org/phone banking. It's really fun. It's free. It's over your computer, so you don't have to have anything except for a browser and a headset. Now, at this point, we probably all have microphones, thanks to our Zoom lifestyle. And what else? So phone banking, you can also, one thing we really ask is that everybody go to Democrats Abroad and share our stories, share our information, because we can share it to you, but you know a lot more people than we know. So it helps us with our reach all over the world when we all are sharing with each other. And as Aaron says, everyone can be an ambassador to their network. Next, I think we have a question from Ellis Wallace. And what is the, Aaron, can you give Ellis the chance to talk? Let's see if we can get Ellis. Let me see if I can figure this out too. All right, here we go with Ellis, and I'm allowing you to talk, Ellie. Go ahead, Ellie.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Go ahead, Ellie.
Oh, good.
How are
well,
you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing well.
I love the Zoom session on Sunday. That is so
amazing.
So amazing. So, but my question is, the people who live in Ecuador, we have no mail. So if they are willing to send their actual ballot when they receive it by DHL, which we've completed an agreement with them for a reduced price for those who have the code for 2020, they will give us a reduced rate of $25. So my thinking is that in talking to people, our people, majority of them are older, and to suggest that they consider that, if they would consider sending it via DHL when they receive their ballot, it's very confusing for them for the FWAP. So is that something you would agree with, or should we still try to convince them to do both?
Well, if they're only going to use DHL, then they can wait for their regular ballot. If there's some way to postal mail, then I would do the FWAB, because we don't know. You know, we're going to have a lot of really, really tight races, right. And probably local election offices are going to accept DHL because the DHL does have a postmark on the envelope, but they might have a case against it. So, you know, it's safer to do both. It's really safer to sit them down on a Zoom call, walk them through FWAB, and postal mail it if they possibly can. I really recommend it. And then if they want to DHL it, and DHL does have an advantage in that it definitely does have a postmark when it's sent on it, and that's really useful. That can be used. And we recommend everyone take a picture of your ballot envelope to make sure you have that record in case of any cases. And there will be cases. You know, we're already involved in a class action suit in New York, helping sue Postmaster General DeJoy. And so we're expecting there will be more cases after the election as well. And so everyone should take evidence of their ballots. Take a picture of your ballot, in the envelope that you're sending it in before you mail your ballot, so that you have that evidence at hand. It's really, really important.
Thank you.
We have a link. Thank you, Ellie. We have a link to the Sunday Zoom session in the box. You can also find it by going to democratsabroad.org. It's on the hero image. You'll see a hero image at the top of the website, and you'll see Zoom Sundays right there. So we have a hand up. Go ahead, Miguel.
Yes. So yes, it is very important. If you have any questions, you could attend our drop-in Sundays. It starts at midnight New York time, and it ends at midnight New York time the next day. So it's a 24-hour live session. It's very fun to join. If you can volunteer, please do. You'll get a lot of voters with a lot of questions. It's really important we get volunteers. I also wanted to, I had two things to say. Our chair from Costa Rica, Kathy Rothschild, is suing with the state of New York. She's one of the plaintiffs, suing the new Postmaster General and trying to make sure our voting process is not being tampered with. So that's good news. I have a question. You mentioned DHL postmarking stuff. Do you know if FedEx or UPS also postmarks stuff? Because perhaps they might be more cheaper than DHL. So I just wanted to know if DHL's competitors, FedEx and UPS, also postmark their our ballots.
I think this is something we have to ask on a case-by-case basis. We have double checked with DHL on this. FedEx often just does a barcode, from what I remember from the 10,000 packages that arrived in Prague this year. And but DHL very, very nicely does have that very clear date that it was sent. So that's something that when you are, we will have more information to share with our members. This is something that we really want to make sure we can give the best advice possible to people. But you know, one thing I would say is UPS and FedEx have already kind of cast doubts on their ability to postmark, so it makes me a little bit concerned.
But in general, if you have questions, vote from abroad, the FAQs on vote from abroad really do go into great detail about the answers to these questions as we best know them.
That's right.
Correct me if I'm.
The courier issue is very, very, very fresh, so it might not be up on our FAQs yet, but we're updating information very routinely. That's, for example, the Vermont example that I mentioned earlier. That is really fresh. Rhode Island has just come out and said that they will accept ballots by email. That is incredibly fresh. Really good news for everybody. Missouri,
Yeah,
we're waiting to hear from Missouri, for example.
I just wanted to just to check that is our that is where we tend to publish information as in a central repository of information when
Absolutely. And also we're regularly check our democratsabroad.org/news, because we'll have updates on voting there too. All right, guys, and now we need to log off. Thank you everyone for joining this virtual breakfast. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's breakfast. It's going to have Build Back Better. Yay! I love these signs. Everybody, thank you, delegates. At this point, we would all be wandering around, heading off to our caucus and council meetings. So I'll see you on the WhatsApp for those for conversations around those meetings. Bye, everybody.
It's breakfast there.
Bye. Yeah, it's breakfast, afternoon tea for some people, and evening cocktails for others. Apero. Ciao.
Bye, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.